youth organizations and activities. And we would love to have you be part of our organization. If you would love to do that, we'd love to have you. All right, so today we're going to have LS Power give us a presentation on the proposed wind energy projects that are being proposed in the Magic Valley region. We have with us Amy Schutte, who is with Hudson and Company. They're a communication and marketing company. Amy she grew up in Philo, so and she lives in Twin now. And so she said she tried to leave, but she couldn't. She just kept coming back. So we're glad she's here. But she went to University of Idaho, and so she's a Vandal. So all you Vandals, you can cheer if you want. We're glad that Amy is here and in the Magic Valley. So thank you for coming. And then with her is Luke Pepez. And Luke is the project manager or LS manager for LS Power. And he has been with LS Power for 16 years. He's from Carson City, Nevada, and he grew up in Nevada. So everybody, I welcome Luke and LS Power. And we're very glad to have you guys here to present on this very timely topic. So thank you. So while this gets set up and in focus here, oh, that's the name of it, in focus. Take that off, come around here if you want. Okay, I have oh yeah, got it, thank you. Right. First, I want to thank you for inviting me here today to speak. It's always wonderful to come to these service organizations and meet new faces, reconnect with old acquaintances, and I love your state song there. I think I haven't heard it that much, at least that in person, so it was a really neat state song. I always loved the Home Means Nevada, sing it loudly and proudly, and it's obvious that folks here share the same state pride, but even more so sing with just as much gusto, God Bless America. So it's good to see that. Again, thanks for having me, Luke Pepez. I think I've met a number of you previously, and I wanted to offer an update or an overview on our wind energy developments here in the Magic Valley area. So, just from the get-go, we see southern Idaho and the state of Idaho as being positioned very well in this new economy, this new form of energy that is up and coming. It's really been maturing over the past 2 decades.
and it's looking to really take off here in the coming years. Iowa's positioned very well if it wants to be a player in this marketplace. Before I go into the updates on an overview on the wind project itself, a little bit about LS Power. So LS Power has been in business for over 30 years now. We are primarily an independent power generation and transmission group. That means we don't typically serve end user utility customers like you or I. Our customers are normally utilities, municipalities, electric cooperatives all across the United States that need to assemble enough energy to serve their customers. We've been doing it, as I mentioned, for over 30 years now and have developed a model that's been successful. We have the right skill sets within our organization to take on projects like this. We also have the financial wherewithal to take on large projects like this as well. Independent transmission is another large portion of our project, whereby customarily a utility will often take on and build large high voltage transmission connections to serve their customers or to make regional connections between utilities across the country. That's another space that we have entered really over the past 2 decades and have had success. And that success has largely been driven by our ability to execute and bring on projects that offer a product that places downward pressure on utility ratepayer customers' bills. That's where we bring in our value. We often have a model and a function that can bring in projects, bring it about in a way that benefits end users in the long run. A quick snapshot of our asset portfolio currently in the United States. As you see, we're from coast to coast, many different technology types. We got our start in combined heat and power in the early 90s. We transitioned into natural gas-fired units in the late 90s. We spent a short amount of time developing coal plants. In fact, probably developing the last coal-fired generation plants in the United States in Texas. And then have moved since the early 2000s more into what the marketplace is asking for now, which is either natural gas or renewables and storage. Many of the utilities across the entire United States, that is their goal, progressively to reduce the amount of fossil-based generation in their supply portfolios and replace that generation and account for additional loads for population growth, for new industries in the region. More often than not, they're asking for those loads to be met with renewable energy. So, as I mentioned, our firm has found a model that we use and across really all of our development projects. It is fundamental for what we do. We call it our core development philosophy. Number one, meeting the needs of our customers. If we're not offering a product that's meeting the needs of our customers, we don't have a product to sell, right? It needs to be attractive to the individuals who want to purchase it, the utilities, the electric cooperatives who want to purchase it. Two, we always have a goal of being protective of the environment. It means implementing the latest and greatest in technology designs, minimizing our footprint to the extent possible, and we tailor our projects as well to the resources of the environmental concerns in the region in which they're located. Third, very high priority for us to work with local communities to ensure that the design of our project fits in with community plans and goals. We, of course, encourage the use of local labor, hiring local subcontractors and contractors, suppliers in the region who can provide materials for these types of industrial facilities, and also have a high priority of providing the necessary training and education initiatives there locally. If that, perhaps that workforce is not trained up for this type of industry work, we often work with local educational facilities to offer that type of workforce development. And again, for part of our core development philosophy is being supportive of competitive markets. We're a free market company. If somebody can beat us on price, that's great. They'll win the day. We're here to bring an efficient product to market, one that's reliable, one that our customers will continually want to come back to us to have us be a provider of electricity or of transmission for them. We've been able to do that and do it successfully over the past 30 years. Some of you have probably seen this map before, and it paints quite a picture just on its face. And until you start to really dig down into the true meanings of these numbers, it's just another slide here. Many of these states across the West are pursuing 100% clean energy. Most of them within the next 20 to 25 years. That's a very large goal for all of these states to meet. Whether it's a state regulation that's been passed, an individual utility, in the case of Idaho Power, who've set this goal, or municipalities such as City Los Angeles. What's not shown on here are all the other corporations across the U.S. as well, who as part of their business, they are looking to incorporate cleaner forms of energy into their industrial practices. This is literally tens of thousands of megawatts of need that's coming over this coming 20 to 25 years. 3,700 in Idaho Power System alone. If you review their integrated resource plan, they set forth their planning of how they will be serving their customers over the coming term. Within there is their plan of how to meet their 100% clean energy objective by 2045. And it lays out within there how many megawatts, what sources they're looking to have them be served from, what technology types. It also lays out the types of technologies that currently serve the customers of Idaho Power. Those facilities that currently serve Idaho Power, it's a mix, and that's important, and something that we will always advocate for is a diverse mix of resources. Just like any investments you might want to make, you want a diverse mix of resources so you're not beholden to any one individual risk. Idaho Power maintains that mix of resources through hydropower, gas-fired plants, through solar, through wind, even through coal. They currently have ownership stakes in a couple of coal-fired plants, not within Idaho. One is in my home state of Nevada. There's also some in Wyoming. So facilities located in other states generating power, economic development in those other states, but that power is being shipped into Idaho for consumption by Idaho Power customers. It's interesting, actually, that roughly 2/3 of Idaho Power's electricity is generated within the state. 1/3 of it comes from out of state. It's an interesting thing that maybe not everyone realizes. It's just how much of an interstate commodity product electrons are right now, all across the West. Another factor that's really coming into play across the West, and one that will help meet these objectives, are the energy imbalance market, whereby utilities right now are looking to that are able to generate electricity perhaps more efficiently than a power plant that's currently within their system. Let's take solar, for instance. In the middle of the day, Southern California, Southern Nevada, there is a plethora of solar energy being generated. More solar energy, in fact, than at many times there's load to meet it. So they have this excess solar energy being generated. When that happens, they're looking to get it out of their system. You can't have an imbalance of generation and load in the electrical grid. It needs to match up. So they are incentivized to have somebody else accept and take that energy. And that incentive often comes in the form of a cheaper power rate. So many of these facilities that say in Southern California, when the sun is shining very strongly, but the load locally is not there to match it, they'll start to ship that power out of Southern California into these neighboring utilities across the West. That same dynamic holds true for many other types of power generation power sources, whether it be a very efficient gas plant versus a peaker plant, or many of those different technology types. These utilities across the West will use this energy imbalance market to look across the area to see which is the next most efficient resource to meet their needs. So if you look this up on the internet, it's called the Western Energy Imbalance Market. Idaho Power is a participant in it, and it's benefiting the customers of Idaho right now to the tune of millions of dollars a year. That's a direct benefit to ratepayers here in Idaho. Many other customers across the West for other utilities are benefiting from this type of dynamic as well. So this theory of looking across state lines of what's the most efficient resource is already proving out and reducing and having a benefit to electrical ratepayers' bills in the end run. So how is it that Idaho can participate here? The Western Energy Imbalance Market right now actually provides a lot of great information in their quarterly reports for what utilities, how they transact. Are they a net importer or a net exporter under this dynamic? I mean, are they benefiting more from bringing power in or benefiting more from taking power out? Right now, Idaho Power is benefiting more from bringing that power into the state, instead of having their power plants used to provide power to neighboring utilities. That's wonderful for Idaho Power ratepayers. But it's also a good thought to step back and think of other industries. Would you rather be an importer or exporter for any of your products, any of your commodities generated within your jurisdiction? Think for a minute about agriculture here within the state. The amount of goods and services produced for that directly, either through beef, through dairy, barley, potatoes. I know when I buy my bag of potatoes in Nevada, they often come from Idaho. It generates a lot of great economic development here within the state, produces tax revenues, it produces jobs, and it's a product that can be used in interstate commerce across state lines. It's an economic driver here locally. We're seeing that same dynamic can be used in the energy industry. It's underway right now, and Idaho has the ability to be a participant such that they can also be a producer, and a producer for their own native load here in Idaho, or to participate in that interstate commerce product. So again, the need for this type of power is immense. It's already happening across state lines, and there is a pathway here through which Idaho could be a major player and benefactor from it. Spend a moment here transitioning more to exactly what we're proposing in the region. So with our eye on the marketplace, we're always looking years ahead and trying to predict where's the marketplace going to be next for opportunities for our business to make an investment. With the multitude of goals and state statutes and whatnot that have been continually looking at implementing greater amounts of renewable electricity, we've started looking in southern Idaho literally years ago. These projects take a long time to develop and construct and implement. From my first time I filed a permit application until I flipped the switch and energized the line. It's a long time. You've got to have the fortitude to get through all that. You need to have advanced planning of where does it make sense to make this type of investment. We've been looking around southern Idaho for quite a while. We started looking in the areas that have the best wind resource in southern Idaho. However, many of those areas with the best wind resource are encumbered by other siting factors that won't allow it to go forward. For instance, many of you probably remember the proposal that was on the China Mountain area by another developer, Res America. Over 10 years ago, they attempted to develop a wind energy project on China Mountain. It's a very good wind resource in southern Idaho. It'd be a very good site, if not for the complications of the sage grouse. At that time, the bird population was nosediving, to say the least. There was a lot of debate of what to do, of how to interact with energy projects looking to site in the area. And it very soon became a critical siting factor. That project ultimately got put on hold so that the State Department of Fish and Game and the Bureau of Land Management and the conglomeration of federal agencies can do further analysis on what exactly would this type of energy development do to that population of sage grouse, and also, frankly, to get a better playbook, a better guidebook, a better resource management plan of how to set up and implement BLM's mandate of multiple use with that type of overlay, with that type of population of sage grouse in the region. Ultimately, that resulted in the BLM and Department of Interior issuing range management plan amendments, resource management plan amendments in the 2015 timeframe, a set of rules for how energy could be developed in the midst of sage grouse habitat. They were reissued in 2019. And in fact, we looked at those rules that were issued under the Trump administration, and we saw there's actually a pathway that we felt could be implemented there. And we investigated the China Mountain region even further and really upped our efforts there in the midst of the Trump administration when these types of infrastructure projects were being encouraged. That's really when we entered our full development mode in the state here and really got that impetus of, yes, this type of development is being encouraged. We looked hard at the China Mountain area, but ultimately were met with feedback from the agencies noting that no, in fact, the development plans, or rather the management plans, are not matured enough, or not enough is known about that resource of sage grouse population to advance that site. So we backed away from there and began looking at other areas in southern Idaho, again realizing that the wind resource is good. Where does it make sense to place these? Ultimately, one of the first places we landed, in Minidoka, our initial project planning area looked a lot different than this. It's been molded over time in coordination with communities, the agencies, and different stakeholder groups to try to address areas of concern, areas that need to be set back from. Again, this wouldn't be our ideal way of citing perfect engineering model with wind area with all the ins and outs in here. But it offers a really good opportunity for a wind resource with what is on site there. The wind project itself, we're proposing, or have proposed to BLM to site up to 400 individual wind turbines. It's a lot. It could easily generate over 1,000 megawatts of electricity. It's not just the turbines. This proposal will require installation of new and improved access roads, the electrical collection lines and substations, the transmission line to make a connection to the Idaho Power Grid. We're studying the ability to install a battery energy storage system so that those periods of times when the wind isn't blowing as strong, we can continue to serve energy on the grid off the battery system. And of course, something like this will take some temporary staging and construction yards during that construction time frame, and operation and maintenance facilities. So really, it's quite a conglomeration of infrastructure required to implement a project such as this. I mentioned a moment ago about the odd shape of the project area and how it has morphed over time. That, again, went back to our core development philosophy of working with the agencies and the communities to be responsive of concerns within the area. That feedback that we've received has really been influential in shaping how we have developed and designed this project. I can't tell you what version number of the design we've been on. It's a continual process to look at all those different aspects to mold this project, from sensitive biological and cultural resources to feedback from adjacent communities, interactions with users of the area, such as the livestock permittees. One thing that really came to light, it's a bad pun here, from the community, the feedback we received on the red flashing lights at night and what we're able to do to mitigate that with the installation of ADLS systems, reducing the potential for red flashing lights at night by over 90%. Another design change we've implemented. And again, coordination with highway districts, telecom infrastructure companies, the list goes on. Really, we've been very active in coordinating with many of those different stakeholder companies, looking to address any concerns that they may have about what we're trying to implement there. And again, trying to bring forth a project to address those concerns or to change our design and what we're proposing to meet their feedback. One of the major items that can come from a project of this scale are the economic development opportunities from there. This is a large facility. It's going to cost well over $1 billion to put this project, if it were to be approved at its full build-out. Projects such as that, of course, will generate many jobs during construction. We're estimating approximately 700 for each year of construction. It would be a 2-year construction time frame. All those goods and services that are acquired to be installed within the project area, they're going to be taxed. Same as the sales and use tax. They'll be flowing through to the tune of over $80 million. Also, all those construction workers, they're going to be being patrons of the grocery stores. They're going to be looking at being patrons of the restaurants. They're going to be patrons of, if they're local here, getting a new car perhaps. That money, that turnover of direct and indirect and induced wages is called economic output. From this type of investment, you're looking at over $500 million of economic output generated just during that 2-year construction time frame. Once you transition into the operations phase, this is where true dividends to local taxing jurisdictions really comes through, because these are annual installments for local taxing jurisdictions. Wind projects in Idaho, independent wind projects, such as the one that we construct, they're taxed on a 3% gross receipts. It's right there in the Idaho code. So 3% of every dollar that we would make gets taxed and flows through and gets distributed in the same manner as your property taxes. When you pay your property tax bill and all those different levies that are within there, that gets distributed in the same manner as that. So your county general funds, College of Southern Idaho, recreation departments, school districts, ambulance, highway districts, all those different funds would be benefactors in the same percentages as their levies as what you see on your property taxes. Again, those are installments that happen every single year. So up to $4 million a year could be distributed to all those taxing funds with the Lava Richmond project. For communities such as Lincoln County, that perhaps has been on the periphery of much of that economic development in the region, that could be very meaningful. I mentioned these projects take a while to develop. We've been at this for over 2 years now.
Well, look, they're going to be 5 years ahead of the 2030.
Our official application was filed with BLM in February of 2020, so well over 2 years ago. We've been coordinating with them and supporting their efforts up until the time where they have initiated the environmental impact statement process. The BLM must analyze our proposal in accordance with federal law, the National Environmental Policy Act. Through that, they will develop this EIS. It's a process where, if you've been engaged in it, they opened up a public scoping phase this past fall. I believe it was August timeframe. They opened up a public scoping phase where they invited all members of the public, community, stakeholder, interest groups, whomever, to file comments of, here's a proposal we've received from Alice Power. This is what they're proposing to do. BLM is requesting the feedback of what are issues that they should be study, analyzing. What questions do you have about concerns about impacts? What are those issues that are important to you? And they received that. They received that feedback in the tune to approximately, I don't have the exact number, I think it's 1,400 comments that they received. They took that to inform what are the resources, what are the issues that should be analyzed in the EIS. That is the point in time where they are right now. They've accepted that public feedback, agency concerns, stakeholder concerns. They've determined what are the issues that folks are concerned about, that want to be analyzed, and they're working on that analysis right now. The answers to all those questions that are coming into them, that have come into them, will be coming forth in a first draft, in what they call a draft environmental impact statement. I believe that's slated to be released this fall. So those of you who perhaps were participants in that or continue to have a voice and offer questions to the agencies or others, that's the document to look for of where those answers will be coming from. And in fact, they get that chance with the draft EIS. Often these projects can be so complex and have so many intricacies and nuances to them, however. If they don't get it right the first time in the draft EIS, they have a second document coming out, this final EIS, whereby the draft EIS is slated to come out this fall. They'll have an open public comment period for individuals to learn more about the proposal, to learn about the results of their analysis, and to offer feedback to the agencies. They'll take that feedback and issue their final EIS. We're thinking sometime first part of next year, if that's their current timeline. So again, it's a long drawn out process. It's one designed for input from stakeholder and interest groups, and it's one designed so that answers can be learned when the EIS is issued. It's going to be a very key document here coming forward. So, assuming that timeline carries through, we would be looking potentially for that decision from BLM as the land management agency sometime this coming year, likely the middle of 2023. A project like this, if approved on its full scale, and again, the BLM's not just analyzing what we've asked them to analyze. They're looking at alternatives to what we've set forth in our proposal. They're asking, how does the project need to be shaped or molded to minimize impacts? Those alternatives will also be addressed. If something other than what we've proposed is approved, that could impact the size and scale of the facility, could also impact construction timeline, but assuming what we propose is approved, we're looking at a 2-year time frame for construction, potentially with infrastructure coming online in the 2025 time frame. Now, I'm going to touch just very briefly, I realize we're probably getting late on time here. We have a second proposal, the Salmon Falls Wind Project, bounded roughly by Highway 93 to the east, Salmon Falls Creek Ravine on the west. Rogers is down there on the southern end of it, out on the Burger View area. Many of the factors here on Salmon Falls, and apologies, I'm probably running low on time here. Leave some time for Q&A if you'd like that. Much of what is being analyzed for Lava Ridge, I anticipate, will be analyzed similarly for Salmon Falls. The BLM has not even started the NEPA process on this yet. They're still preparing to even initiate that. So this is still a ways out. It's approximately 3/4 the size of Lava Ridge. We're talking around 280 individual turbines. We're still refining that as we prepare to enter that NEPA phase with BLM. That translates roughly to development potential of around 800 megawatts. In your similar type of supporting infrastructure from roads, collection lights, substations, communication facilities, and the like. Here again, similar types of meaningful impacts, meaningful benefits in terms of economic development, jobs, tax revenues for the region, can really be a shot in the arm for the Twin Falls economy. Timeline for Salmon Falls. you're looking to be at least a year, perhaps two, behind the implementation of what we're targeting for Lava Ridge. So, again, this one is harder to track given its stage in development, but this could be out into the 2026 before it can even potentially enter the operations phase. With that, I guess I just wanted to end on a note. You know, our firm, we take this very seriously. We take our interactions with the community very seriously. We take our commitment to what we're doing. We're here to be a good neighbor. We're here to be invested in the community. We're here to offer jobs and benefits locally, offer training opportunities. These are not short-term projects. These have a lifespan of up to 30 years. We're here to be part of the community for the duration of that project. These projects can be sustainable over the long term and can be reinvested upon over the long term as well. It's not like a mine where you mine out the minerals and it has to be put to bed and it's left there. This investment can be reinvested in again and again, assuming that wind resource continues to be there again and again in 30-year increments. With that, again, probably running short on time, thank you for having me here today. I'm happy to take any questions if we have time for that. I can also stay afterwards if any of you have questions afterwards for me as well.
I've been thinking a lot about the wind projects that have been in place in Idaho for some time now, and took note on 2 different trips this summer. One of the problems I see with wind generation of energy is that you count on sustainable winds to support your system. The problem is, and we've seen it 2 years in a row, substantially high pressure systems. I am a meteorologist by profession. And when you have high pressure, you have very low winds. And how do you make up and justify the placement of so many wind turbines? Hopefully, you know, you have demand in the summer for energy, heat demand. And it is kind of like it's out of sync. You know, you don't have the winds to sustain these turbines. What is the point? And also the impact is, to me, is profound. We're talking so much area that is going to be permanently displaced and changed, be it visual, be it environmental. I think about the habitats of many animals in the air and on the ground. I mean, those things you cannot reclaim. And so you have to look at the bigger picture. Another thing is topography. Our valley is shaped kind of like a banana. So you have a narrower valley up to the west and to the east. The winds diverge with, with the topography. It gets slower here. And so that's another thing to consider when you're putting 2 major wind farms north and south. I mean, I really wonder about the sustainability of the wind and the changing, whatever we get these huge high pressure systems. This is persistent. It's going into its 2nd full month. And it's looking into September to be very stable, hot air, no wind. So how do you address that?
Yeah, so you're right. Wind is not a base load power.
But the impact on the environment is enormous.
Wind takes up real estate. It does. Any type of energy development will have an impact, right? When we flick these lights on, that's coming from somewhere. When we flick our lights on at home or run our irrigation pumps, that's coming from somewhere. Somewhere there is an impact for what's happening right here.
Can we minimize the impact by some other method instead of wind turbines? Or like I have solar power in my house. I've had very little as far as requirement to pull energy from the grid. I've provided. So why don't we encourage
That's wonderful.
that more?
It should be encouraged more.
And why can't we, it's just like, to me, the impact of having these huge towers, you can never go back to seeing the horizon without, and those animals, have they ever done a study of how these turbines impact the weather? Because you're generating all sorts of extra velocity and turbulence into the atmosphere. So there's so many aspects of it's not a solution to me. It's generating more problems than it solves.
So you've brought a lot of good points there. Happy to continue afterwards on some of those individually, but note this. This is a continually maturing technology and one that's been in place for decades already. Literally thousands of wind turbines across the United States to look to inform some of the questions that you just answered there.
But our topography is unique here. It is. And so you can't really say, well, it's going to work everywhere because of those factors. That's just one part of it.
Thank you all.
I'm happy to stay afterwards for those that would like to talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We will, he will be staying for any questions afterwards. I do want to thank you both for being here. We will be donating a book to the children's section of the Twin Falls Public Library in your name for us. Thank you for being here. And Zach, do we have tickets? Okay, thank you. I just have a job for you. If you will. Okay, 497. Not the winner? Okay. 489. Okay.
I did.
Thank you all for joining us. Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. We are adjourned, and he will be here if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Seeing you, my friend.
We had a pretty good turnout. We did fill the room. I think it was the guy from Crapo's office, Rish's office rather, that didn't like Liz talking. You want to say anything?
This is my name. I think Liz, the only thing I have to say is I think Liz slammed dunked on that question.
Yeah.
She did great.
What'd you think, Gary?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. No problem.
Progress. I'm not against it.
No?
No, not at all.
I think you're one of the only people in the room that are not against it. I know this guy's against it. No?
I'm not against it. No, I'm not against it.
What?
But it's got to work.
You talk about the recycling. There's thousands of these things, and they need to change blades like
Did
every
you
what?
want
7
to come
years?
talk to this guy? I'm live.
I don't care. That's
Just like
one
changing the
question
car
that they
tires and everything else.
said. I don't know.
You don't know? All right.
I do know. I mean,
It's definitely becoming a formality. They're just checking boxes, letting comment.
Suzanne, how's retirement?
I wonder why they created an LLC with a local name. That's a question I'd like to
Let's go
ask.
ask.
Four smalls versus one big, or you get more turbulence?
It depends on the area.
You know, there's books, you know, for the last 34 years on wind areas of the world. And, well, anyway, you know, it's a science. But anyway, good luck to you guys. Did you know that Barney power plant?
Yeah.
You know, I heard 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was a politician said we want to be buying more coal.
Does anybody else have questions while I'm up here? Throw them in the comments.
Oh, we still are.
Yeah, Yeah, I think their plan is to eventually.
Natural gas?
No, I think they're looking on that one to decommission in the future on that one.
Why did this go to natural gas? Wouldn't that be cleaner?
You have to ask Idaho Power on that one.
Yeah. Anyway, you got customers there.
Okay, wonderful.
I was actually curious why a LLC was created with a local name.
Yeah, we
Like
do.
was that
We do for each of our development areas. We do a special purpose LLC. And what that does is that has success or failure of any one project. We create our projects to stand on their own 2 feet. They need to make financial. If we have another project across the country that falls on hard times, it wouldn't impact something here. If that makes sense, we're looking to
the
have
opposite end of
everything.
that, if this project falls on hard times, you could take that LLC and just kind of cut it from the LS, and then it's not really a problem for the main company anymore, correct?
So if you look at the inverse, sure.
Well, I just, like I said, and then putting Magic Valley, to me, it's more like the locals see a local company, so they're going to want to more support that versus a company that's coming from New York, and then the individual that's running it's not necessarily even from this country.
So
That's the kind of stuff I don't understand. Why even have an LLC? Why not just come in here with LS Power and everything's good to go?
So
Because if the community supports you, they're going to support you. Why create something to make the community kind of? To me, it's misleading. Is the way I take it, and I am living. This is in my backyard. Like literally, I will see this every single day. I'm a 4th generation Idahoan. My family in the Salmon Falls area was there before the reservoir was there. We dry farmed all that. And to me, this impact is a little more than what you guys are realizing, no matter what studies you do. And we got a governor that's a 3rd generation Idahoan that's supporting this, and there's reasons he's supporting it. It ain't because he's a 3rd generation Idahoan. There's federal things going on here that people are not being aware of, and I think if everybody were completely on it, I don't quite grasp
Maybe
all
we
of
could
it.
ask
Maybe,
that
but
specific question.
I'm just
for
Can
us on the point that you were asking about the why
right,
Magic
the
Valley
LL,
Intersection.
right, and why
So,
that name is what I'm saying. Why not Idaho Falls Power? Why not any other name but where we live? This is Magic Valley. Do you know why this is called Magic Valley?
Yeah, because of all the irrigation that made.
And not just that, we produce what is in our soil produces seeds and different things that other parts of the world cannot do. Period.
So the reason that we do that, first of all, we're an American firm. We look to be part of the communities that we come into. Part of that,
You just said you're an American firm, but where's all this money coming from?
are American owners.
Who are the American owners?
Our CEO's name is Paul Siegel.
Okay, you're recording this?
I am recording it right now.
We look to come into communities and be part of the community. That's what we try to do, as I just mentioned.
Right, and I understand that.
Part of that is having an identity, a locality there, right?
But it's
Right,
deceiving
but
what you said.
But
Why
LS
is it?
Power
Why is that
isn't
deceiving?
that your identity
Why is that
already though?
deceiving?
It's your
what is
American-based
that?
power,
I'm-
whether you come
I'm-
from another state or not.
Exactly.
That's
It's American,
so-
whether it comes from another
so
state or not.
why, I understand creating an LLC to have operations here and have but like I said, I just found this out like a couple weeks ago, and this stuff's been like, you guys have been here for how many, like with the Lava Ridge, a couple of years already. And that's what I mean. People I talk to that I know, that I see every single day, don't even have a clue that you're from New York, that the company's based out of New York. They don't even know that LS Power, that Magic Valley Energy is a subsidiary of LS Power. That's what I mean. It's
Okay. Well, now I think you're probably helping spread that word.
Well,
It's great that you're engaged now and you're getting your neighbors engaged, because there's plenty of opportunity going forward to have a voice.
And I
in
mean,
this.
I understand you guys are a job. I don't understand how you can support something that's, I mean,
Oh,
if
but
you lived where I lived, I'm done.
he's just doing it for the
I can't
paycheck.
even-
He's just doing it for the paycheck.
So my other question is, you said that you're going to have 350 employees. Have you driven around Twin Falls and looked at the businesses that are looking for help currently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So there's people that aren't wanting to work because of our current government, right? Do you agree with me on that?
There's a lot of people
Who do not want to work because of what our current government is doing.
Okay.
Okay, do you agree with that? Our federal government.
I think that's beside the point, but
No,
I
it's not beside
understand.
the point,
I
because You're not going to
understand.
get people to work for you because they don't want to work. So then you come out here and you build these great big things, and then our birds die, and our eagles die, and our bats die, and they're all part of our system that we need to keep going as people. What are you going to do to stop that? Because from my understanding is Alice Power, if they kill these birds, they're the ones who count the birds, and you're allowed 55 eagles. Is that correct?
Well, what?
55 eagles to die.
We don't have a final determination from the agency on an eagle take estimate.
Okay.
Okay, but
if an
you're allowed to
American
kill
eagle,
the
which is our
birds.
national bird, dies.
So you have to get a permit for that to happen, and in order to gain a permit for that to happen, you have to take certain mitigating actions that actually improves the habitat for that species. In other words, so essentially you're doing a net conservation gain for that species in order to get authorization to take a single one.
Okay, question for you. Okay, wind power is not a reliable base power for electricity. Is that correct?
A single facility on its own, yes.
Okay, what happens when the wind doesn't blow or cold weather freezes the windmills? This happened in Texas a year or so ago, and people froze to death because they didn't have power. They relied on this base on the windmills, but the windmills quit, so they didn't have electric power, and they froze to death.
So you do need multiple types of generation
So you need to have
sources,
a base power that works irregardless.
or you need enough geographic diversity to ensure that at somewhere in your network you have power supply coming.
Okay, but again, it's dependent on the wind. And you're saying if you get a big enough area, you'll have wind blowing somewhere everywhere. But
That's right.
still, when the wind doesn't blow, somebody's got to provide power, or
Yes.
somebody's going to either cook in the summer or freeze in the winter. So don't we need to have a reliable, and basically if we're going to have reliable, it's got to be a hydrocarbon power plant that you can turn the switch and have power.
That I think is part of the solution. You need a diverse mix of resources, but I think it's riskier to put all your eggs in one basket, honestly. Look at the price of what gas has done here recently, the price of natural
If we
gas.
go ahead and drill, I'll take my chances with natural gas.
But none of this is really going to generate power for Idaho anyway.
I'm sorry?
So none of this proposal that you've made is going to generate power for Idaho anyway. So
We
how
don't know
is
yet
it?
there. We
So
don't
have
have
you-
this. We don't have the power sold yet.
Have
We'd
you-
love to serve Idaho.
Okay. Where do you guys live?
We used to.
Okay. Have you been out to Mountain Home or
Yes.
Glens Ferry where you've seen the windmills out there? Have you been out to Burley?
Yes.
Okay, you notice those don't move
Sometimes.
most of the time. I live here. You live in Nevada. I drive the interstate all the time. They don't move. Okay? They don't move.
Okay.
So they're just sitting there. The type you're proposing is even taller than that.
That's
That's
right.
a distraction.
Every year, the technology is improving. The technology generally looks to extend the length of the blade, which makes it taller. That additional surface area will increase the ability to capture the lower speed winds.
And what happens to the blade when it doesn't want to work anymore? Like,
At
let's
the
say
end of
a
its
blade
life?
gets damaged.
Yeah, what happens when it gets damaged?
So if a blade needs to be replaced, they bring a new blade to replace it.
And what do you do with the old one?
The old one, you can, unfortunately in the past, some of them have ended up in landfills, but many of them now are being chipped down and looking actually as a feedstock for new companies that start to recycle them.
But do we have those new companies yet?
There's one in Texas.
Just one.
Okay, so we have to
Right.
ship the old blades clear to Texas in order to recycle
So what's the
them.
cost
No,
for the state of Idaho to do that?
either the developer or the recycler
will take that cost on and take it to
Well,
Texas. Yeah.
Let me
Okay.
tell you about Twin Falls County.
Could
We
you
can't even
tell me
we can't
one
even recycle
location
plastic.
that is reliant 100% on solar and wind power? Is there any location in the United States that doesn't have a backup with hydrocarbons?
I'd have to think about that. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay, so ultimately we're still reliant on hydrocarbon fuel to
Right
make
now.
our baseline, to make our base load.
Right now.
Otherwise, people are going to freeze or cook.
That's right, right now.
Okay, thank you. That's my thought.
Another question, it's like, okay, so you've got Jerome and Twin Falls and Lincoln and Gooding County, no, not Gooding, Jerome County. Their commissioners have all said, you know, we've had enough people make input. They're concerned about the roads, they're concerned about the wildlife, they're concerned about the aesthetic nature of their counties, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so they've turned that down. In NEPA documents, it says that you have to work with the local governments. You aren't going to be able to do that. So where are you? I mean, how are you going? If you've got these county governments that are saying, you know what, we have listened to our citizens, they are in opposition to this. So how are you going to handle that?
Yeah, so I see those resolutions, they lay out very clearly the list of topics that the commissioners have heard from their constituents, right? Of be it visual or wildlife or all those other items that they've listed in there, and they're asking the BLM to make sure that those are analyzed, which is great. The EIS should be addressing all those items in those resolutions. There's where answers will be coming out to all their questions.
So basically, the no alternative is what they'll have to come up with, because you can't mitigate on 480 miles of road in Lincoln, Jerome, and Minidoka counties. I mean, I don't know how you. Yeah.
Okay, working with the local government does not mean you tell the local government what to do. Working with the local government would be you've got to take into account their considerations and answer their questions, not just tell them what you're going to do. You've got to have the local government in agreement with you, not just tell them what they think, but listen to what the local government has to say.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a for example.
Okay, if the local government says they don't want any windmills, then how do you rectify that?
So I'll give you a for example.
Okay.
The highway districts, they've expressed concern to us about the impacts on the highway district roadway, right? For overweight, impact them during the spring thaw breakup period. There's actions that we can take to help alleviate those concerns. We've told them verbally, and we're putting it in writing to them, that roadways that our project uses will be left in as good or better condition.
So you're going to repair the state highways?
If we're responsible for ripping up these things,
how are we going to prove whether or not you're responsible or the tourists are responsible?
So we've done level of service traffic analyses on there to determine what impact or what our traffic will do to the traffic in the area, in the roadways. There's analyses that are performed to look at that.
You've done the analysis, so we're trusting you on your analysis on how much damage you've done to the roads, and then you'll decide whether or not you're going to fix it?
No, for those items, we work with these agencies.
What agencies?
So in terms of highways, the highway districts, if it's another resource that's under the BLM's jurisdiction or Fish and Wildlife, it's their determination.
Well, how do you, like you say, you're going to fix these roads. How do you fix the road that you've driven out to where the windmill is? You can't replace that.
You can't remove it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't replace that desert that you tore out to put that road in.
There is an impact that comes with this project.
Okay, so
and I agree. I lived out on a ranch in Three Creek for a lot of years, and we could not even work on a road that we had an RS 2477. You know, so I'm not even sure that this is something that is something that I just can't even imagine how they would say this is okay.
Okay, so let's circle back to his question though. So he wanted to know, if the local government tells you no windmills,
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Well, I hopefully try to understand their concern a little bit better. What is the aspect of it that's concerning to them? Is it the visual? Is it
other than windmills?
Or
Yeah,
are you guys
there's-
just gonna
there's-
pack up your stuff and go?
There's solar, but there's solar that works here. We see other areas that are more efficient for solar. There's geothermal. There's still hydro pump storage and hydro energy. There's a lot of different energy forms
We
that
have
need
those
to be
big solar
developed.
panels up by Mount Home too. I haven't seen those between Mount Home and Boise.
I have seen those. Those are
Totally kills the view.
those are
Well, you don't see
relatively
the prison anymore, which is good, but.
relatively small compared to other installations down in Desert Southwest.
Okay, for instance, I live in historic downtown. I have trees all around me. I can't get solar on my house. I've had somebody come, an engineer, come to my house and say you can't do
Yeah,
it. So how's that benefiting me?
the solar installation.
I can't do solar at my house. There's too many trees. It's historic
Right.
downtown.
So that's a good example where you're not going to be able to meet your own load with solar on yours. If you want clean energy to serve your property, you're going to need to look to your utility to provide it to you unless you move.
Which natural gas is doing just fine.
Okay. If you have a preference,
Right.
if you have a preference for that to be something that's not fossil fuel, is that a determination for you or not?
No.
Okay, then it doesn't
No,
matter.
I'm more concerned. I flew back from Ireland, okay? Between Ireland and Amsterdam, there are, and I can show you pictures, windmills in the ocean.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of oil leak is just coming out of those into the sea? That's affecting our animals in the ocean.
I've never done offshore wind. I do not know.
Maybe you should look into it and see what kind of effect it's having on the oil that comes out of those things. I know a guy that used to service the windmills up by Mount Hall. He was an engineer that would climb up into the cone, and the amount of oil that came off when he came out of those things that was on his body, and he's transferring that to the ground. So you're still using fossil fuels to produce those, to get those running,
Right.
keep them moving,
Transport them.
right?
Exactly. Anytime we turn on these lights, it has an impact.
Right.
And whether it comes from wind, solar, or fossil fuels, there's going to continue to be an impact on the landscape in some form or fashion.
So how much of the money for this project is coming from government subsidies?
Zero.
So one guy, you mentioned one man so far that's in charge, or it's his money. Is it just one man, or is there multiple men that are, or multiple people that are invested in this company to say, we're going to put this much money into Idaho? If we're not paying for any of this, who's paying for that?
So our primary owners, the ownership structure flows up to primarily our CEO and our chairman. It's Mike and Paul Siegel.
So they're brothers.
It's a father and son.
Out of New York City? Upstate New York?
I think they primarily live in New York. I don't keep track of where they live all the time.
Okay.
Were they born in New York?
You know, Mike immigrated here, and Paul, I don't know where Paul's born. I believe
Where did
Paul's
Mike come
born.
from?
So he was educated in, I think, that same city in Ukraine that just got blown to smithereens by the Russians. He immigrated over to here.
That's very interesting. You didn't mention at all, I don't want to jump in, I want to ask you real quick is, what is going to be the impact on our flight, the air traffic? Because we've got the Air Force Base, we've got Twin Falls, and we've got Jerome County Air Force, or not Air Force, but the airport.
Yeah.
And these are 750 feet tall. I looked up the other night and I'm seeing airplanes down probably 300 feet above my house. And it's like, come on, this is really crazy, the height of this.
Yeah, so airspace restrictions are one of our primary siting criteria right from the get-go, right from our initial. Gets us comfortable enough that, yeah, it can coexist. What we have to do formally, and what we have started, is filings with the Federal Aviation Administration to put out sample turbine locations and proxy turbine heights for them to analyze to determine, is there any intricacies of any of the airports in terms of airspace approaches, departures, circling procedures, all those different factors that the pilots deal with to determine if any of those individual turbine locations triggers a red flag. That process
So
is
that's
underway.
under the investigation at this point.
Yeah, that's under FAA's process right now.
So just with the local pilots here, do you know how many smaller planes and aircrafts are stored just at the Twin Falls Airport?
I don't keep track of that, no.
Okay. Do you know, like, how many of those pilots recreationally fly over our desert?
I have somewhat of an indication through that just from talking from some of them, and then also when we do our analysis, sometimes we'll query or get a FOIA of radar returns to see exactly how many airplanes fly in the area. So we do have an indication for that.
So you're going to be impacting their backyard because, I mean, they fly over there on a daily basis. Have you actually posted out at the airport what they think about this?
So
because you're impacting their area as well in the air?
We have met with some pilots, and again, we are designing this and proposing this to have no impact to air navigation.
That's impossible. These things are taller than the Space Needle. How is that not going to impact the airspace?
Even like crop dusting. I mean, I know they're probably not in the middle of the desert, but what if they do need to go out that way? I mean, that's firefighting would be huge, yeah.
Yeah, and so on that note, that is a good point. We've tried to get feedback from those pilots that fly those air attack fire planes.
I'm going to make sure to leave some emails out there for them. That way they can contact you directly.
Sure, that'd be great, because what BLM has gotten back with their conversations, they're not restricted from flying within wind turbine areas. It's on the comfort of any individual pilot whether or not they want to fly within there. And remember, the spacing between the turbine arrays is about a mile wide.
So
I'm not a pilot. I'm not a pilot.
So
I'm not a pilot. If there's enough space and I was trained, I would consider it. Yeah, it's going to be the pilot's discretion. So we need to come up with other ways to show that we're going to be able to handle if a fire pops up in the project area.
We have another big question. Information that when LS Power filled out the FAA form, I think it's 6022, to include all the areas that would be affected by Lava Ridge.
Okay.
Somehow, Jerome Airport was not listed on that. And then the FAA came back with their response, and LS Power had a time frame to counter that. They didn't, so the county commissioners had to go in and complete that.
So we filed an initial filing with FAA. That filing only consists of the coordinates.
I was trying to get that.
The coordinates, the tip height, and the mean sea level elevation of where these go. And FAA picks it up from there. We made a filing in, I want to say 2020 or 2021, and then we've recently made another filing to revise those initial ones.
To include the Jerome Airport project.
We don't signify any airports in the region when those filings are made.
I have a question for Amy, because you're from here, right? You moved away and came back. What brought you back home?
What brought me back home? That's a beautiful question. Are you actually interested?
I am.
Okay, great. Well, I moved back home after I studied abroad, and I met my husband and fell in love. That's why I stayed.
So you moved back because you got married?
No, I moved back here after I studied abroad and graduated, and then I wasn't going to stay, but I met my husband and stayed. So, yeah, my family's here.
I got about 5 more minutes.
Okay. Well, one question is, are you aware that renewable energy companies need to get approval from the Department of Defense for your siting when it is in the area where the military conducts their training? The siting for Salmon Falls is right in the Mountain Home Air Force Base training path. So has LS Power received approval from the Department of Defense for
Salmon Falls? We haven't received approval from FAA or Department of Defense for either site.
Were you aware you needed to get approval?
That screening is normally conducted as part of FAA's review.
Okay. And then another question. So I understand Ellis Power has hired a lobbyist, or one or two. Who are they lobbying?
So we've had lobbyists retained forever, right?
So who do they lobby? Are they lobbying legislators or congressmen? Who are they lobbying?
Yeah, they assist with all types of government affairs items. If it is meetings with representatives or senators or whomever.
And I have another question. So I don't know how much you've looked into all of the negative aspects of wind power and what's going on in Europe, and they're actually shutting down their wind power plants because of they're not reliable, their power rates have all gone way up, all the birds and bats they kill. So if Ellis Power has other energy types of energy that they invest in, why wind? Why not invest in the thorium nuclear reactors or a natural gas power plant? They're cheaper, they're more efficient, they're greener, because wind turbines are not green. They're not green, clean energy. So, you know, I'd be all in favor of you guys if it was anything but wind power, because it's I have not been able to find not one good thing where communities have actually put these wind turbines in. There's not one good thing communities have to say about wind. So why not do the nuclear power or natural gas or whatever?
So, actually, I have spoken with people who have wind in their community and like it. So I guess there's two sides to that.
Do they like it because of the tax breaks?
Can you give specific names or contact information of people that we could talk to? And
are they local? Are they in Idaho? Are they in other states?
Because I would like to know who these people are that like it.
Sure.
Other than the people that are directly benefiting by money.
So, he said they're not getting any federal money from this at all. $0.
You get production tax credits that was just extended in Biden's new bill.
Yes,
And
that is not.
the only way that makes green energy work. It's the only way.
The federal government is incentivizing these types of technologies.
But you just said you were taking $0 from the federal government.
That is exactly right.
But it's tax credits.
I know, I was trying to get him to explain it in his words, how he can justify telling me that the government is in no way, shape, or form paying for any of this, but at the same time they are. You're just twisting words and using fancy definitions.
I'm not twisting anything. We do not get a check from the federal government. They're offering an avenue for investment here. And for us,
so that is tax dollars.
What that does
and that's coming
is
out of our
offers
pocket.
Us. No, it's not. It's not. You don't get taxed more for this.
You're right. But my money that gets paid into the tax system is now being given to you so that you can do this green bullshit and ruin, well, I'm sorry, I don't have to censor myself, and ruin our skyline. So you don't live here, you're not going to look at it.
Look, what the production tax credit does for us is it allows us to offer the price of electricity at a reduced rate to our customers. So any amount of reduction gets passed through from us to benefit the customers.
These windmills are just like a Tesla.
But listen,
I know people that work for Idaho Power, and they say our rates are actually going to go up here. Because wind energy is very expensive. It's like 11 cents per kilowatt hour versus hydropower, which is 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour. I don't know the exact numbers, but so I know the concern of people from Idaho Power that I've talked to, their concern is our rates are going to go up here in Idaho.
From what?
Because green energy sites, they're not 24/7. The sun doesn't shine all the time. The wind doesn't blow.
Right.
So there has to be alternative powers to kick on
and fill those downtimes. So basically, every green site requires fossil fuel energy to support it. If you're familiar with having a well on your ground, on your farm, the quickest way to wear out that well motor, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. Over time, that destroys the motor. So how is Idaho Power going to navigate? Well, let's see, is the wind going to blow today? Is it going to be cloudy today? They have to back you up at your beck and call.
So first, we don't have power sold for this, right?
Pardon?
We don't have the energy from this facility sold to any individual
Yet.
or any
Oh,
utility
please.
yet.
Yes.
We do not. We do not. This is our model that we go.
So you're going to
So would
invest
you?
billions of dollars and you don't have a buyer.
Yeah, that one's hard to believe. Come on.
We have a
So
thriving.
why do
We have a
you
thriving
wanna-
marketplace.
So LS Power, which also owns the company up to midpoint, so all that power can go down to Vegas and California.
They're a potential customer.
Yeah.
So is Idaho Power.
Yeah, but they're not sold.
What's that?
They're not sold yet.
No.
You don't
Right,
have
and California and Nevada probably have bigger pockets than Idaho Power does, so we see where that's going real quick. Because
Do you-
you're
do
here to
you
make
want-
money.
Do you want the
You're
power?
here to make money. This is a profiting business for you, right? So it's
yes.
going to get sold to the highest bidder.
Yeah, which is California.
Would you like the power to stay or to leave?
We would like you
to leave.
Okay.
That's a good way to end it. Thank you.
I'll leave.
You're
I
not
enjoy.
welcome.
I
You are
enjoy.
not
I'm just going to
welcome.
say,
I enjoy these
you seem
interactions.
like
Think.
a very nice man, and it isn't personal.
It's not.
It's we are opposed to wind turbines specifically.
Okay.
If your company wanted to do other forms of energy,
And maybe guarantee that the power was going to stay in Idaho, not get sold to the highest bidder, and screw our kids and grandkids into higher power bills? Maybe.
and I look at it, our skyline, the environment, the habitat. You can't replace any of that once you put those in there. That's my big concern. I chose to live in Idaho because of what it looks like. That will all be ruined forever. And you know, again, this isn't personal against either one of you. It's just I came here for what Idaho is. I love this state, and I will forever hold LS Power in absolute contempt if these things are built. It will forever ruin Idaho. And as a native Idahoan, please, maybe you can persuade your company, do something else, and we'll get behind you, but not wind power, please. I hope that what Idaho is more important than any amount of money you're being paid. Because what
can't
we
put
have
a
here,
price.
it's priceless. We love the state. We have our own stupid little song. That's how much
It's a great song.
we love Idaho.
Yeah.
And the
You
climate
know.
here from Oklahoma, which is windier than here.
Yeah. Well, look, I
So
thank you a lot, one-on-one. I don't know if you believe it or not. I appreciate the feedback. So,
Please take into
thank you.
consideration what the meteorologist said as well, Liz, about the topography and how the wind goes through here. You know, some people think they're smarter than others, but that's not always the case.
Sure. All right. It's good to see you again.
Joan, real quick, where do they go to learn more?
StopLavaRidge.com. Join the Stop Lava Ridge Facebook page.
contact
Oh,
all the elected officials.
I gotta get going because my back's.
Say that again.
Contact all the elected officials,
Oh, sure.
Give your
commissioners, legislators, our senators. You can send your comments to the local offices. Mike Miller is here today. Send comments to them because our Washington DC officials are watching this and they get a report every day of what comments their offices have received. Contact the BLM. There's a
And the
Zoom
governor.
meeting today, the governor's office, Department of Interior, Department of Lands.
Okay.
And two websites, stopthesethings.com and windwatch.org.
Okay, I'll put those in the comments too. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Joan, do you have